Hi, it's me, Rose. I'm trying to make that my intro, trying to make it a thing, the hi, it me thing. Um, anyways, ever since last week's video, I've been trying to think of topics to think about for this week, because I said I would make it a weekly thing, and so that's what I want to do. I really enjoyed being able to do that sort of style of content, because it was a lot more stripped back and a lot less produced, and I didn't have to do anything, laborious to make the video. And that felt nice because, you know, I didn't have to do too much while recording it and editing it, which is very different from my normal video style, I guess. But anyways, since that video, I've been thinking of topics to talk about, and a couple have come to mind, but nothing really that strikes me as particularly good. So today, I just want to talk about my identity, specifically my identity as a person in the LGBTQIA plus community, which is a lot of letters, by the way. That's the only part that I could see people being actually confused about, by the way. Now, I identify with the label of queer and non-binary, which those are two very different things, because one relates to my sexual and romantic orientation, and one relates to my gender, or I guess lack thereof. I've had a rough time with my identity. So to take you back, growing up, I live in the South, like the deep South. So growing up, I was always surrounded by people who weren't very kind to queer people, and let's say me growing up would call me now a slur and would absolutely make fun of me, despite the fact that younger me had their own issues going on that they really should have been focusing on. But I was a very, I guess, right-leaning Republican when I was a child, which is a sentence, I guess. But that's because that's just sort of the environment, not necessarily that I grew up in, but it's what I was surrounded by because of the people that I associated with, because that was what people my age were raised with as well. I When I got to 7th grade, I started being able to form my own opinions for myself and start to think like a conscious, sentient human being, and that allowed me to discover that I was queer in some variety. At the time, I identified with the label of bisexual. I came out to one of my neighbors, and that was the most like stress relieving weight off my back ever. Like it was such a difficult thing to actually admit. But when I did, it was just very, I guess, freeing. It was just so nice to be able to actually say this thing that I was so afraid of admitting about myself. Which, growing up, with the friends I surrounded myself with, we called each other the F slur all the time. We were very gay people are gross, which is not a great stance to have. And they would make fun of me for being gay, even though I wasn't at the time. I don't know. I knew I was attracted to women, and that's all I presented. But there are several queer experiences in my youth, like middle school, and even some dating back to elementary school, honestly. But of me being attracted to men without really realizing it. And that's a whole thing. But anyways, they would make fun of me for being gay, even though at the time I, didn't know I was. And that definitely led to some of my internalized homophobia later down the line, because when your friends are making fun of you for it, which the reason they were is just because I was a very emotional kid. I was slightly feminine, I guess, or just a little effeminate, which is fine, you know, whatever. But that caused them to really bully the shit out of me, honestly. Like, they were ruthless. And I'm still pretty heavy. I'm not like overweight or obese or really fat, but I'm still on the slightly heavier side. But when I was a kid, I was a little bit more pudgy and round, and they would not stop reminding me of the fact that that is the case, or was the case. And that really got to me. Uh, but and that also led to a lot of self-hatred. Um, but the main thing that they would tease me for is being gay, just because I was kind of feminine and very sort of in touch with my emotions. I was a big crybaby growing up, which isn't a bad thing by any means. I kind of wish I was now, because they sort of operated under the mindset of men don't cry and men need to suppress their emotions, this, that, and the other. That is very commonplace and has been for years and years and years, which is a very toxic mindset to have, and it's very unfortunate. And so now I am physically, like, the only time I've ever been able to cry since middle school is at closing nights of shows I'm in. And in recent years, I haven't even done that, which is, you know, if that's the only thing that'll get me and make me able to cry, that's a big issue because it is healthy to cry and it's normal to cry, and crying can actually be a good thing, you know. It can be a very good release. But because of my friends at the time, I learned to push that feeling down and just sort of push it away, which is very bad. Don't do that. But they would tease me about being that way, which made me really hate my queer identity, which really also fed into the whole, Republican thing, which I was so young. It's it's really weird and a little funny to be like, yeah, when I was, when I was 8 to 10, I was a Republican. Very, very gay hating, you know, just just like things that, a kid shouldn't even have to think about. Um but I did, and it was just constant. And it didn't help that I grew up in the Mormon church, of which I have now left. Um I don't particularly judge anyone who's in that church. I don't agree with a lot of the things that the church says, but that is a separate issue that I will not go into at this time. Anyways, regarding my queer identity, that, you know, I grew up in an environment that my parents never outright said that it was necessarily bad to be gay, or like ever told me if you're ever gay, we will disown you. There was never any of that. It was more subtext, I guess. Thankfully, I'm in a very loving and happy environment with my parents now, which that's not to say that I ever wasn't, but it's a lot better now than it ever was. Which again, it was never bad, but now it went from okay to like really, really good, which I'm very fortunate and very, I never take that for granted. But because of that, I felt a lot of shame and a lot of guilt and a lot of anxiety around being queer and being perceived as queer. So being able to come out to my friend that night, it took a lot in me and brought a lot out of me. And since then, I was able to come out to my friends very, very, quietly. I was very quietly queer, back in the day because they were homophobic, and I didn't know if telling them would destroy our friendship, which in the end it did kind of do that, which did go to show that they were not the right people to be around. But from then on, I was able to actually start coming out to people. One of those people, of course, being my mother, who is a very, very lovely woman. Love my mom to death. I came out to her in a Panda Express, of all places. I forget what we had done that day or why we were out or why we were at Panda, but we went out and I just told her, this was 7th grade, mind you. I was like, hey mom, I like boys and girls. And we had a long conversation about that, and in the end, I didn't get kicked out or disowned, so I'd say that's a win. That's a plus. And from there, I stuck with bisexual for a while. I was kind of secretive about it. Eventually, I came out to my other family members, which before I came out to my mom, I came out to my brother after my dad had just made some offhanded joke. One night, he asked me, are there any cute girls on the bus? And I was like, no. And he was like, are there any cute boys? And I said, I can neither confirm nor deny, which looking back is really funny to me, that they didn't catch on that. But immediately after that, I went into my brother's room and came out to him as bi, which was really, really funny to me now. Of course, it was terrifying back then. And I think he said something along the lines of, yeah, I know. And he's also very, very queer, so very gay man. So we loved that for him. But then I eventually lost those friends who were not very supportive, which at the time felt devastating to me because I was losing what was my best friend and a ton of other friends by extension. But in the long run, that honestly sort of freed me because it allowed me to be a lot more open and a lot myself. And that led me to be able to discover what being genderqueer was. And I've gone through a lot of gender identities. I have identified as a woman. I've identified as a man against my will. Kind of, not really. I don't know. I was born into being a man, which was not fun for me. I very much did not like that when I found out that there were other options. I think the first identity that I landed on, I want to say it was non-binary, but I don't know. I could be wrong. But I went through several different identities before I landed back around on non-binary. Went through a couple different names too, which was yikes. Those names, they weren't bad, but they're just so not me. But thankfully I eventually landed on Rose, which was fantastic. Very good choice on my part. I did good there, I guess. And I've been sort of set in that. I felt very comfortable with that label for a while since my like freshman or sophomore year, and it's been very, very, very nice. Obviously, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There are still, again, we live in the deep South, so there's a lot of homophobia and a lot of transphobia, especially all around where I live. I thankfully live in a pretty okay area, but there are still Trump flags everywhere, which not getting into politics in any way, but historically Trumpies not the kindest people to queer people. Just saying. I feel like it's not a very hot take or a big shocker. I've been called slurs in public before. I've been called slurs in the hallway. I've never been physically attacked, but there have definitely been times where I've felt my safety has been threatened, which has been very scary. But I am so proud of who I am that I just don't care. I don't care enough to care. Like I'm not changing who I am, and what one person's opinion or even millions of people's opinion of me doesn't change who I am or how I identify, and nothing ever will change that. And so I now feel a lot more comfortable and that's a very big sense of pride in who I am. And it's been a very, very long journey. But it's been a great one. Well, I say it's been great. It's been alright. It's been rough. But, you know, it could have been worse. But I know that there are people, probably people who are watching this out there, who have it just so much worse. And while I can't say I necessarily relate to you on that, I definitely feel you on that. You know, I understand what it's like to be hated just for loving who you love or being who you are. Because that is something that I myself have experienced a million times over. You know, there are people actively fighting to, you know, have my rights taken away just for being who I am. Just because I don't fit into a socially constructed, you know, ideology. Like, it's really stupid, and I really wish that it wasn't a thing. But unfortunately, it is. I'm gonna wrap this video up now, because I have a stream to do in 10 minutes or so. So, should probably end it here, but just know, like I said last time, you're loved. It gets better. You know, you will find your group of people who will be there to support you and who love you exactly the way that you are and exactly the way you're meant to be. It just takes time and you know, just really putting out that effort to find them. Anyways, that's enough yapping for me for this week. I will hopefully have my next Tethered Life video out soon or something. Stay tuned to find out. So, yeah. Adios.